Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you. We are starting this new cycle. This is the beginning of the revelation, and the Prophet ﷺ will start a new life. Remember, we are now at the time where he heard a voice coming to Ghar Hira, the cave of Hira, and he was called the messenger of God. So he is Rasulullah, and this is and will be the case, of course, until he passed away 23 years later. When he went to the cave and he was on his own, the angel Gabriel, the same who came to Moses and came to Jesus, peace be upon them, came to him. And this is where the revelation started. In fact, the beginning started with the revelation of the verses of the Surah chapter 96. When the Prophet ﷺ received the visit of Gabriel, he told him, read. And he said, I'm not of those who read. And he heard a second time, read. He said, I'm not of those who read. He heard a third time, read. And he said, I'm not of those who read. And then started the revelation when Jibreel alayhi salam said, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لا يعلم. So these first verses are very important, essential for many reasons. When it is said in the Quran, read in the name of your Lord who created. He created man from a clinging cloth. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. He who taught by the pen, by the means of the pen, he taught man what he did not know. Here, if we come to these first verses, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. In fact, at the beginning he said, read, and the response of the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm not of those who read. And then he heard, read بِسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ. Read in the name of your Lord, in the name of your educator, who created man, who created you. And in fact, the power that he didn't have, or the capacity that he didn't have to read by his own, what he got from God is, read in the name of God. So by the power of God, you will be able to read. So what you can't do by your own, you will be able to do it by and relying on God. So that's an important dimension. The second thing that we have in the first revelation here, the first verses that he got, that he created man from a clinging cloth, so he's coming from almost nothing. And then adding to this, that God is the most generous. Rabbuk al-Akram. Al-Kareem, generous. Al-Akram is the most generous. So the relationship with God is that you will get something out of this relationship, and God is the most generous for you. And the last point that we have here is Allama bil-Qalam. He taught man by the means of the pen. He taught man what he didn't know before. So three things are important here. The first, as we said, is that the power of reading, even if you are not able, with the help of God, you will be able to do it. The second is the very first revelation is talking about knowledge. So you acknowledge the fact that there is one God, and the relationship with him will be based on this knowledge, which is essential. Read. And as we will see through everything in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, it's not only read the Quran, it's read everything, because everything is around you as a book that you have to read, full of signs. So read means look at the world in a new way. It's to change everything. Now it's time to read by the power of God, through the signs of God, for you to follow the path towards God and coming back to him. So here, this is the starting point of the revelation, where we very often repeat that Islam was based on reading, so on knowledge. It's based on this acknowledgement that God was here. Just after this first revelation, the Prophet ﷺ was just shocked. He didn't know what happened to him, so he was asking himself, is this something coming from the devil? Is this something, a vision that was negative, that was maybe something that was not true? So he was scared. So he went back home to go to Khadija, his wife, radiallahu anha. And then he said, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, cover me, cover me. And this is what she did. She covered him, protected him, and he was scared of what happened through this first revelation. So she wrapped him in a cloak, and in fact, she asked him to rest and to calm down. And as he was troubled and not at peace, what she did was important. Khadija, radiallahu anha, comforted him and said, you have nothing to fear. You have nothing to fear. Take a rest and calm down. God will not let you suffer any humiliation. You are kind with your kind folks. You speak the truth. You help those who are in need. And you are generous with your guests, and you support every just cause. What she did at that point was important. In fact, she covered him as he was asking, cover me, zammiluni, zammiluni, because you know that there is a chapter in the Quran called al-Muzammil, so the one who is covered. So she did this. And then she did something which is important. She covered him, protected him with her words, saying, you are a good person. That couldn't come from the devil. It is coming from God because you are a good person. So it's a double protection. Remember what he said in the Quran, Hunna libasun lakum. Your wife are a protection, a clothes that is protecting you. This is exactly what she did. The role of Khadija radiallahu anha in this first step and then during his life is so important. We'll come back to this later. So this is what happened at the beginning. We don't know exactly how many verses were revealed during this first period, but it's important to remember that the first verse is talking about revelation, and then he got other revelation, and there is another situation where he got a revelation helping us to understand the relationship between us and knowledge. While he was troubled, Khadija, and we spoke about Khadija and her cousin, Waraqa ibn Nawfal, she decided to go with the Prophet ﷺ and to ask him about this. So, in fact, when he was asked about the situation, Waraqa ibn Nawfal said, oh, holy, holy, he is the prophet, he is the one that we were expecting, and he acknowledged the fact that the sublime Namus, meaning the angel Gabriel who came to Moses, came to him. He will be the prophet and the messenger of this community. And straight away he said, now you have to be careful because the people are going to attack you. The people are going to banish you. The people who are going to turn away from you. Your own people are going to attack you. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he met Waraqa ibn Nawfal the second time, was surprised. They are going to turn against me? Yes, because no one brought what you are bringing without being attacked. And once again, we need to get this right. It's not that because you come with a message of peace, that you are talking about dignity and justice and brotherhood, that the people are going to be open to your message. All the prophets, all the messengers, whatever the society, whatever the time, had to face exactly the same fate, which is, of course, people loved them so much. The people around them were supporting them, as it happened with the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. But others, even from his own family, started to attack him. And he understood this even at the beginning of his mission. He got just the first verses here. And this is what he got coming from Waraqa ibn Nawfal, who had this experience, who was a Christian, and he knew what was going to happen to him. So he was warned that he should be careful about this. Having said that, now the Prophet ﷺ had to deal with this first revelations, and then, as it is said in some traditions, he got a new revelation here that we find also in the Quran, which is also dealing with covering. And this is where he had in the Quran had بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نون والقلم وما يسطرون. Noon, it's a letter, one of the letters of the Arabic alphabet, and والقلم وما يسطرون. Noon by the pen and what they inscribe. ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون. By the grace of your Lord, you are not insane. And this is also something very important in the way it is dealt with in the Quran. وَإِنَّ لَكَ لَأَجْرًا غَيْرَ مَمْنُونٍ وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. So in fact what is said here, you will have a reward that will never end, and you are of a great moral character. Look at these verses. We said at the beginning, read بِسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ. In the name of your Lord, your educator, read. And here, Noon وَالْقَلَمِ وَمَا يَسْطُرُونَ. Noon, and by the pen and what they inscribe. That's something which is very interesting. The first verse is talking about knowledge, and in the second revelation that he got, depending on some tradition, not all the traditionalists are agreeing on this, but what we know about this, that's very soon he got this revelation starting by noon. No one on earth knows the meaning of this letter. Why? Allah, God is choosing noon and then alif, lam, mim. These letters at the beginning, some are trying to find something which is a symbolism, and others are saying, we don't know. Even the Prophet ﷺ never gave us the ultimate answer. Meaning what? Meaning that from the very beginning, you are called to knowledge, and with this verse, known, you know the limits of your knowledge. Yes, you know, but you will never know everything. So there is something which is essential for us, is seek knowledge, while you understand that there are limitations. And once again, we come back to what we saw before, intellectual humility. In fact, in order to go and to understand the meaning of noon, you need the knowledge to get it and the knowledge to know that you will not get it. And this is where rely your faith. You believe when your knowledge is ending. So your faith is directing your knowledge, and your knowledge is directing your faith. You need both from the very beginning. This is what we find in the Quran from the very beginning, and this is something also which was very important in the Prophet's life. It's Surah Al-Qalam, which is directing us towards this. So here, the Prophet ﷺ was trying to deal with this, understanding that it has to do with a way of looking at the world, a way of looking at himself, at looking at the signs around him. And at one point, there is also something which is connecting here. You are not insane. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Connecting the knowledge and the limitation of knowledge with something also which is important. You are of a great character, a sublime character, a noble character, a noble personality. And here we got the third dimension, which is important. Faith, it's about knowledge, and it's about action. And as he was a Sadiqul Amin before, the truthful and the trustworthy, he had, noble principles and noble values and noble morality. The faith is connecting this with, you have been chosen. Well, Al-Mukhtar means you have been chosen, one of the names of the Prophet ﷺ, because also of your noble character, your noble personality. So faith has to do with knowledge and has to do with action. The three dimensions here are always there in our understanding of Islam. And we need to get this, because this is the starting point of everything that we have in the Quran. So as I said, we don't know how many verses where were revealed, but there is also something that, as I said, was connected with him being covered and raising and standing up for the message. We find this in the Quran al-Muddathir, when it is said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha al-Muddathir, qum fa'anzir, wa rabbaka fakabbir, wa thiyabaka fatahhir, wa rujza fahjur. What it is said here is also important because it helps us to understand the second stage of this. O who wrapped up in your mantle, arise and deliver your warning, and your Lord magnify, and your clothes purify, and abandon or exile yourself from any abomination. This is also something here where what we get from this story, it's important, is Ya ayyuhal muzzammil, who you are covered, and now Ya ayyuhal muddathir, who are wrapped up in your mantle. And what it is said here to him, it's Kum fa'andir, now arise and deliver your warning. So you understand, or he understood straight away, okay, you get the message, now it will be a time when you have to speak up. You will have to spread the message. So it's your mission now that you have to do this. And you have to do two things: glorify your educator, glorify your Lord, and at the same time purify your clothes. So there is again a fourth dimension here, which is a way that you have to purify yourself. And to purify yourself, it's literally just to be pure with water. As we know, water will help you, but not only that. You have to exile yourself from any abomination. Exile, fahjur, al-hijrah, will be what the Prophet ﷺ will have to do later to leave Mecca and to go to Medina. But spiritually speaking, the first step is to exile yourself, to abandon what is happening in your around you as abomination that are negative in the way you are to educate yourself. So what is important here is that you remember that we said that he was on his own, he was an orphan, it was a test. And there you understand that in fact he might not have had a mother or father. He was fatherless, motherless. He was on his own, but in fact, without parents, he had God as an educator. And once again, you need to also remember this in your own life. We always have to need, sometimes something happened that we see it as negative, and in fact, it's because something very positive it's coming. It might be that you detest something and it's good for you because in fact, he had no parents, but he had God as an educator, bringing him, covering him, protecting him, and telling him, now it's time for you to say what I want you to say and to deliver the message. This was the beginning of his mission. What happened after this, it's quite troubling because it's a second test. After this, there was a silence. This is what we call al-fatra. For some traditionists, it's 6 months. For others, it's more than 2 years, 2 years and a half, with no revelation at all. So the Prophet ﷺ was troubled and he was scared and he was just feeling bad, say, okay, I'm maybe not worthy of this revelation. I'm maybe bad. And he went many times at the top of the mountain, in a sleep mountain, and just trying to throw himself. And every time he was to go there, he was to hear a voice saying, Ya Muhammad, Anta Rasulullah, you are truly the messenger of God. And in fact, when he was doubting himself, God was to come to here and telling him, you might doubt yourself, but don't doubt the presence of God in your life. So this is also something, it's in Bukhari. I know that some Muslims, they don't like to talk about this, but it's in Bukhari. It's Aisha who quoted the story and who said what happened, and that the Prophet ﷺ was scared for a long period of time, 6 months or 2.5 years. It's a very long period of time. And this is also a test where, in fact, God came to him, Allah came to him. At what point he left him alone, as if he wanted to test him. So now I'm with you, but without me, you are vulnerable and you cannot do without me. So this is something also that it's important in this first step of this revelation, learning to doubt yourself without doubting the very presence of God, of your educator in your life. Now, the revelation started again, and it started again with a surah that we already talked about. When we have بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى. When it is said here, by the morning light and the night as it settles, your Lord did not abandon you, nor did he forget. The hereafter is better for you than the first, and your Lord will give you, and you will be satisfied. So coming after this fatra, this period of time, the test of silence, the revelation came back, and will never end for the coming 20 years. But here you have the symbolism. It's by the morning light. So the morning light is the revelation coming to you. And the nights when it settles, it's as if the silence was this night, and now God has not abandoned you. He's here. Even though you felt that he was far, he was close. Even though you thought that you were abandoned, he was following you and helping you to get the very essence of this relationship between you and God. That's also something important. And he will give you, and you will be satisfied. Meaning by that this is the future will be bright, and God will be with you and will give you what you are expecting. There are two things here that we need to add as to this story and the first step here. He was going to start with the revelation, and you know that the revelation was coming. Sometimes it was the angel Gabriel coming in his angelic features, sometimes as a human being. Sometimes it was like a ring bell. It was so tight, so difficult for the prophet to bear with what was happening as the revelation, that sometimes it was very difficult, but he was able to repeat word by word and to keep the Quran as it was. And we know that, in fact, after this, the revelations were not coming in a chronological way. The Quran as we have it now, it's not the way it was revealed. It's afterward that the angel Gabriel was indicating to the Prophet ﷺ, this should go there, this should go there. And every year, during Ramadan, he was to repeat the Quran to make sure that the whole Quran revealed, the whole book revealed as it was through the oral tradition, was kept as it should be. And this is the way it reaches us afterward, and we have it as the book in the way he has been kept, and not in the chronological way. In fact, all the verses that I'm quoting now are coming at the end of the Quran in the way we read it now. So let me just add 2 points before ending this session. The first has to do with Khadija radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, because in fact, the image of Khadija, it's very far from what we got in our Asian and Arab cultures, you know, a woman who is very shy and not assertive. She was exactly the opposite. Very, very committed. She had a social role. She was a trader. She dared to ask the Prophet ﷺ about marriage, and then she was also involved in everything. She accompanied him in all and through all the tests. The first was the family test, when they lost 2 boys and they had to deal with this. And then it was also when the first revelation came, and then she was by his side. In fact, once again, she was not behind him. she was at his side. She was by his side and struggling with him. When he came and he was scared because the first revelations came to him and said, what is happening to me? She was there, and she was the one protecting him and helping him to stand up, to go to Waraqa ibn Nawfal, to assert the message. And more than this, what she did, she was the first to convert. So she believed in him as much as she believes, of course, first in God. So she was supporting him. And one of the signs of God in his life is Khadija. Exactly what we said about Hajar and Ishmael, Ismail and Hajar, they were there. Abraham salam, was on his own, and his Hajar said, if this is coming from God, do it. His son said, if this is coming from God, do it. You are not on your own. That's exactly what happened with Khadija. Khadija was in the life of the Prophet ﷺ the same sign as Hajar and Ismail were for Abraham ﷺ. And you need to get this, because the signs, read, it's not only read the book, forget the people around you. Read your wife, read your husband, read the people of your family, because there are signs of God's presence through this. That's also something that we need to get. And the last point here in our discussion here is that when Gabriel appeared several times, we need to remember this as the conclusion of this first step, because everything is there already. There is one God, and this is a Tawheed. The second is, you need to know, because there is an angel talking to the Prophet, that there is an invisible world that you need to deal with. And you need to know that knowledge is essential, but knowledge and faith should have as an impact on your life that it has to transform your life in the good behavior. إِنَّكَ وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. So you have a noble character, and morality, it's essential here. So it's a virtuous circle through this relationship to God, this relationship to the invisible world. Change yourself, change your behavior, and these are the signs that you are close to God. So the Prophet ﷺ was receiving the first revelations, and this is what he did, understanding and getting from the very beginning. Qum, you have to stand up and you have to spread the message. So it's a revelation for you. It should be a guidance for all. Don't forget to tell the people you love that you love them. Life is fragile.